Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Doom Patrol. A great episode. I really appreciate because I basically got what I was asking for last episode. Like, maybe we actually, hopefully getting to see the underground. Obviously, it didn't go down the way I thought it would. Like, I was thinking, like, oh, maybe the whole episode would take place over the course of a second. It's like, no. And actually, we learned a lot about the underground this episode. I mean, it is like not literally just an underground. There literally is a train that runs through the underground, which is so interesting. But we also saw that basically every personality that Jane has looks like a different person. Because I just assumed that they'd all look like Jane like they do anytime they rise to the surface, but that's just what her body looks like. So obviously who they are as, the personality kind of manifests certain features about themselves when they rise to the surface. But obviously we also learn from like Driver 8, because she looks like Jane. The fact is, not all the personalities look like completely different people. Some of them look like Jane. It's still something that none of them know why. It's just the way it is. And I love that. Everyone kind of carrying away. And it's so interesting because there's actually that one, was it like Pretty Polly? It's like, oh, Jane was like, when's the last time you went to the surface? Oh, never. And I thought that was such a fascinating thing because I was like, wait, so there are personalities of hers amongst the 64 that have never popped up before, which is interesting. I mean, because it seems like Niles had the underground mapped out. Maybe she was just exaggerating. Maybe there have been instances, or maybe it is a situation of maybe Niles only knows about certain personalities because other personalities reference. Like maybe Pretty Polly never has come to the surface, but maybe one of the other personalities has mentioned her in like a session with Niles or something like that. So if that's the case, that's really interesting. But it also seems like there is always a prime personality, and that is Jane. She basically keeps balance. Her being at the top, like if someone else stepped up who wasn't the primary, because it's like that's what Jane's role is meant to be. Like all of them are meant to play their each individual roles. They exist for a different reason. And like, for example, Driver 8, her purpose, it's like, oh, I drive the train. That's kind of her thing. Hammerhead probably comes out, when Jane gets super mad. Like she needs someone to kind of be the more aggressive side. So each one plays their own different roles in different ways. So it makes you wonder what makes Pretty Polly come out then, if that's the case. I mean, why? And that in itself is going to be an existential thing of like, why exist if you're never going to bubble to the surface? Maybe it's just because the certain circumstances relating to her coming to the surface just haven't come up yet. Like I said, it could just be a thing that Jane was exaggerating, like she's never popped up to the surface. It just might have been her just flustered because it's like you never really come to the surface. So, but I feel like she chose those words specifically. So I know I'm getting so caught up on it, but it's such an interesting thing to me. And so they all want Jane to go back to where she belongs, that's at the surface. They even said an interesting thing of like, while you're not there, like if like everything kind of gets disrupted, like there's rules to this whole situation. There's a flow to how things kind of go. They're meant to work a certain way, and we don't let them work out that way, shit goes wrong. It's almost like a situation of like, you leave us vulnerable. And that, because obviously, like, we cut back, like, later on at the end of the episode, I'm not skipping around, but it's just kind of an interesting thing of, like, Cyborg and Rita being like, oh, yeah, like, they're like, Cliff is like, what happened? And it's like, it's kind of almost like a long story or something like that. So I'm assuming, because we did see at one point in time while Jane was unconscious, it looked like her body kind of smirked a little bit. So I'm assuming at that time, it could have been a thing of like, oh, maybe Mr. Nobody snuck in and controlled her body. Or one of the other personalities rose to the surface and took over, like the more dangerous personality that kind of stays buried because she kind of threw everything off the loop. It's like, oh, no one's here and piloting this ship? Okay, let me take over. It might be that type of situation, which kind of went to letting Karen take control. But I thought that was such a fascinating thing. Obviously, the spirit, and because I love Cyborg being like, oh, if only we had like a magic school bus type of thing, we could shrink down and get inside of her head. And then, Larry and Rita are looking at him. He's like, what? It's like, well, we just didn't expect you to kind of embrace the supernatural and the weird side of things. And then the spirit comes out and it connects Cliff and Jane together and sends Cliff inside of her. And what's interesting though is while he's there, he looks like his human self, and obviously he's meeting other personalities because it's like he meets Hammerhead. He knows it's like Hammerhead, right? He's like, yeah, I pretty much figured that out. Like we met a lot of interesting personalities. I'm blanking on her name, but we met the personality, the one who can turn words into weapons. We saw her. So what's interesting, kind of, we met like the secretary, we met Baby Doll. She didn't say anything, but she was there in the background. I thought was kind of pretty neat. So it's like some of the personalities you got to actually put like a name to face with. Like obviously every other time we'll see them from now on will obviously be like, oh, just Jane, them looking like Jane, and obviously they're just their personality kind of coming through. But still, it's so good. We met Penny, and a little bit of an interesting thing too, because like Penny doesn't have her stammer. Because even I didn't even notice that until Cliff was like, "Yeah, what happened to you?" She's like, "My stammer." I was like, I completely forgot that was one of your things. And it's like, oh yeah, because she wasn't at the surface. Like being at the surface makes her anxiety kick in, because who she is, she's the one that runs. She's decided Jane is like, oh, I exist to make it so like kind of your fight or flight mode. She's kind of like the flight mode, and I thought that was kind of interesting because she's like, I don't run into danger. I kind of run away from it. Which is interesting considering the fact is she's the one that kind of led Cliff down the path to everything, you know, so it's kind of interesting, even though she's kind of like, she sticks away from danger, which she didn't go like the final leg, but she went most of the way, and I think that in itself speaks volumes that, you know, maybe her role isn't 100% of what she claims it to be. I don't know, I just thought that was kind of a fascinating thing, because there's a lot of interesting things about the way the underground works, in the sense of like, because obviously, like, it is inside of her brain, so of course, like, the underground is connected. Like, because part of me was thinking, like, so is the underground just like a manifestation, kind of like a hub world for all her personalities to be? And so I started thinking, like, well, because obviously it's connected to Jane's brain, as we can see, they gotta all go to different memories and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, so does that mean the underground is a memory? It's like, no, I think it is just literally a manifested hub. It does also seem like they might all have their own, kind of like their own rooms. They each have their own station that the train can drop by, because we saw Miranda's station, so that means each of the other personalities has their own place as well. Makes you wonder, does Jane have a station? She might not, just because she's the primary, meaning that you might not have the case. And that whole conversation about primaries, I know I'm all over the place, so I do apologize, but like, that's just how into this episode I was. Like, Miranda was a primary, I'm assuming, before Jane. So had there been multiple primaries beforehand, or was Miranda the only primary before her, you know? Like, is Jane only primary number 2? And I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case, maybe. Because we did see, like, it seemed like Miranda came about when Kay was, like, probably, like, a preteen. Like, she might have been in, like, middle school or something, I'm assuming. So it does beg the question, how does that whole situation work? And like, when something happens to one of her personalities, are new personalities create? Like, for example, when things went down with Miranda so that she ended up stop being a primary, is that what led to, did Jane get created to become the new primary, or did Jane always exist and she only just stepped up to become the primary after everything went down with Miranda? It's hard to say, like, how everything is kind of orchestrated, because, you know, because another interesting thing about it is, like, the underground, the easiest way, because it is a gigantic maze, the easiest way to kind of navigate through it is to go from memory to memory. And it's so interesting. Obviously, the deeper into the underground you go, you run into, like, the darker memories, but, like, Penny was like, yeah, some of the darker memories have a tendency to kind of stick to the good memories, too. So that's, like, a lot of that stuff is fascinating. We kind of find out a little bit more about why the other personalities kind of don't like Cliff in particular. Is because he screwed everything up. Like, things were fine and dandy. There was, you know, there was control to this chaos. There, you know, it might not have made sense to a lot of people, but for them, it made sense. Cliff showing up threw everything off balance because Jane had hope. Because obviously we see, you know, as everything progressed and you kind of figure based on everything that's come from the past, it's like, yeah, her dad is like probably her biggest issue when it came to trusting men. And then the whole situation with Niles, like she let her guard down. Niles, there's a whole complicated thing with Niles, but then like also a complicated thing with Cliff. It's like, you made her feel like, hey, maybe there's something to this, that I can trust people again. And Cliff kind of broke that trust for her. And, you know, even he kind of goes like, I'm sorry I put you in this situation. I did like him breaking out of the seal, because I thought that's what it was going to be. It kind of comes up later on because he punches the wall and he kind of breaks it and he hurts his hand. But I was like, this is all in your head. Your brain is what determines whether you feel pain or not. Like, legitimately, your brain, you know, obviously your synapses and stuff like that send stuff to your body, being like, yeah, like, oh yeah, that's supposed to hurt. That's what that it's supposed to, like, you know, give that response. And so when he punched a hole in the wall, I was like, he's actually still a robot. He just doesn't know it until later on when, like, you know, Black Honest is like, oh, no men are allowed. He's like, I'm not a man. And then he rips off his skin, which is pretty damn brutal. Because it's like, yeah, that's not who I am anymore. Because he's walking around this cliff and it's like, I'm not that man anymore. I was a lesser man back then, but I'm not that man anymore. So this version of himself can help, because it's almost like, in a way, you can make it seem like him apologizing the way he was acting wasn't him as he is now as Robot Man. It was him as Cliff, the Cliff that existed before he met, everyone in the house, before he met Jane, before he took steps to becoming a newer and better person. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. There was this interesting conversation with Karen where Karen was basically like, oh, you'll never have what me and Doug have, you and Jane. Because the fact is, it's like, she says, like, the other bitches are afraid of being normal. And I guess Karen's the one that embraces normal and stability. Because I think the others kind of like, we live in this chaotic thing of like, and that's our thing. So we're like weird and chaotic and we enjoy that and we're afraid of being normal, but maybe Karen embraces it. Basically trying to tell Cliff that Jane isn't worth it. So I'm wondering where the hell did they take Karen? I guess she just kind of got thrown back to her station. I want to know what's up with Jack Straw. Like, what the hell is up with that? What did Jack Straw do to get locked up? Because Jack Straw gave Cliff the knife to kind of help cut through the wall. So that was fascinating. And we never really found out, like, what was it that... Well, because it seems like, obviously, we had the sisters. That's so interesting, because Penny's like, they're not one of us trying to tell Jane that, but it's like... The thing is, it seems like the sisters... It seems like it's a primary thing, but it seems like the way Penny was kind of making it, seems like the sisters want every one of us at some point to go down to the well. That's why no one go visit them, because Penny's like, they're not one of us. I guess because the sisters are kind of like their own super separate thing. Or like maybe the other personalities just don't embrace them because of the whole Miranda situation. Like Miranda kind of went down to the well. Things did not go well. And so, pun not intended. And that's why, they kind of don't look at the sisters that way because it's like, oh, they've subsequently been trying to send everyone down there at some point in time. Or is it just simply a primary thing? Because like it's like the answers you'll seek and need are down there. I wonder, will the answers manifest as a different thing for everyone, or is it kind of all like part of the same thing? I don't know. But when the time came, Cliff was there for Miranda, because not Miranda, but for Jane, and because obviously like Jane's trying to figure out her own. Once again, it's identity crisis upon identity crisis upon identity crisis, because Jane doesn't know where her role is. What role is she supposed to play in all of this? And she's trying to she's saying that Kay is so perfect, and it's like, but who am I supposed to be? Am I supposed to be what am I supposed to represent? What is her role? Like, because for her it's like the world is chaotic out there, and she's like, she wants anyone else to jump at the job. It's like, why do I have to be the primary? Why do I have to basically be the one to deal with all the shit out there? So I thought that was kind of interesting, but obviously, like, at the deepest, darkest core, it is kind of what you figure. Like, her dad did some terrible shit. He was a monster. And, it's interesting because her mom gets brought up, but we still don't know about that. I mean, I don't know I doubt her mom would be alive after all this time. Maybe she is. Maybe she passed away at some other point in time while Kay was growing up. There's still a lot about Jane, Kay, whichever you want to go about it, that's still an enigma. So, but it took seeing Cliff in danger like that to kind of make Jane go like, no, standing up to her dad and being like, I'm not afraid of you. The fact is you destroy everything in my life and I won't let you destroy him. I think for her, it's like, I think that's kind of what she's supposed to represent. She's representing that side of Kay who isn't afraid. I think that's what Jane's purpose is. I mean, that's how I interpret that. I don't know. Like, I think she's just supposed to be the side of Kay that isn't afraid anymore. The one who's able to kind of take all the chaotic bullshit and stands up no matter what. I think that might be it. Maybe that's just me interpreting that. I don't know. But when it's all said and done, she does stand up to her dad and it's like, being, dealing with her darkness and being like, I'm not afraid of you, so go away, so obviously Cliff and Jane kind of leave the underground not really saying anything to each other, but I think from this point forward their relationship is back in a good place. Now what the hell that means for the rest of the personalities and Cliff, that's a whole other story. But even Cliff at the end was like, yeah, it's not my story to tell like what went down. So for him it's a situation of, and Jane will talk about when she wants to talk about it, and he's like, but I think she's doing better. But we do see at the end it's like her dad is there saying like, sweet, sweet baby. So like, it's not something that's just going to disappear overnight. It's not like even when she conquers the darkness, that darkness is still there. I think it's just going to be something she has to sadly live with for the rest of her life. I think that type of trauma isn't something that just easily goes away, but when you're not alone, I think you don't have to handle things alone, especially because Cliff was there. I think she has an extra shoulder she can rely on. Like, I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this, now that, another therapy session kind of happened to a certain extent, so... But like I said, I'm really curious to see what the other personalities are going to be like when they, talk to Cliff. I mean, because obviously there's certain personalities he'll never run into again, like Driver 8. She's like, yeah, like, I kind of look towards the light and wonder what if, but then she kind of like goes, nah, but then it immediately disappears and I just go back to doing my job. This is where I'm content with, so... Because it also turns out that memory that Jane and Penny had went to, which that was an interesting thing too. She's like, aren't you worried about not knowing whose memory this is? Because Penny, it's like, well, this is the underground. Like, the fact of the matter is, it's kind of all our memories. Because, like, even, like, Jane got pissed because it's like, wait, you told him about Miranda and, the well, and Penny's like, that belongs to the underground, so it belongs to everyone, so I can tell whoever I want to, type of thing. So it is kind of interesting to see, like, this is kind of all their things, while Jane's kind of nitpicking about, like, what ownership belongs to who with that type of situation. It's so interesting, but it turns out in the long run that memory is Kay's. So it's just fascinating, the underground. Like I said, I still feel like we haven't really even scratched the surface on everything that there is. Like, is there anything below the well? Is that, once again, is that what Miranda saw, which led to her being in the state that she's in, to the point, literally, I wonder, is that what Miranda looks like on the inside? Does she look like a teenager Kay? Or is it just that's how she looked like in that particular memory? But, like, her station was dark and disturbing. Like, there are people hanging there, and just kind of like, I think going to the well just broke her, so. But like I said, it was a great episode. That's why I'm super excited to see what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.